I still see him as, you know, chair.
Yeah, well, I was, I said, well, it's kind of, he said that he had, wants it.
Yep,
He
he's
said
a
he would be, if he reached out to him to see if he was, he said, yes, I emailed him today. And I'm sure he would.
Oh, he will. Fred actually, he is still retired, but when he's great, he just couldn't let it go.
And he's a CPA.
I'm afraid to say yes or no, I'm not sure he is.
No,
These are the things.
there I am.
You went open right up here.
Well, why does it go over here?
That's okay. I don't mind it not being here.
But it's always over there.
That's okay.
No, see there, it's whoever talks.
Oh, you have to talk?
When you're talking, it should turn to you.
Oh, good, okay.
Oh, when I'm here.
I don't want this owl.
Well, has anybody
Now it's gonna show the book.
did Jerry, have you heard from Jerry?
No,
Okay,
not a word.
all right. So she got the link, she got the.
I said something.
I know.
Oh,
I'm waiting for it to move to Evelyn. It's not moving to Evelyn. I don't know why.
because I'm very quiet.
No, you're not.
I'm very proud, but I have a very low voice.
Why does it think I'm a bunch of books?
I don't know.
Try singing Mary Had a Little Woman and see if it responds.
Now, meanwhile, we are recording all this nonsense that we just said.
Yeah. Is there, maybe there's another view?
The problem. Yeah, I don't know. Is Stephanie here? She knows how to use it better than I do.
No, she didn't.
They can see it, yeah. I move over to the left.
Oh, put it on speaker here instead of.
And we have a company, we were getting someone come up, Casey Max, who came up to see what kind of food they were today. At 5:30. Casey ran 3 years ago. She ran the same time I was last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I was looking at it when I left and then we had to figure it out, so I've never it's been working.
This is very strange. You see how I'm facing in the opposite direction? There at the top.
Okay.
What's that?
I'm facing in the opposite direction.
Oh.
Keith up at the top portion.
No, now it went to you.
Oh, is that you moved?
You're supposed to go to you when you speak. See, like this.
Uh-huh.
There it works.
Now it's working. But it keeps thinking.
I can't understand why I'm facing the opposite direction from Keith.
I don't know how.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Tuesday morning. Oh, I got it.
But then
It's 5:03, should we start?
Yeah, we should.
All right. I guess please tell me what I'm saying. I'm slowly into this. I will call the meeting to order. That time. And now, I guess it's going to be usual, is that?
That's good, yes. We want to look at the bills.
Okay.
Now, I was waiting for another bill that Joy said she was going to do, but she's stuck on a phone.
Oh, is that the, Molder? Okay.
Yeah. So, anyway, read through these if any questions, and then I'll introduce that. There's another bill. I lost my pencil.
You need another one?
Somebody took my pencil. I got my pen back. Yeah. I don't think, oh, here's another pen.
No, you have another
Where's the
one.
pencil?
You want a pencil?
Thanks, man.
There are a bunch of pencils over there.
Hmm?
In a cup. There's a bunch of pencils in a cup over in the place.
Anyway. I'm good. Any questions on the bills?
well, will we be able to pay Tom?
What's that?
Will we be able to pay Tom?
We have
Since
to,
we're not, since we're not.
yeah, we have to go to approve or to recommend it.
Okay, so since he's not on here, will he get paid this month? I just want to be able to tell him.
No, I'll introduce that,
Okay,
so you can pencil it in.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Um,
What was the tech work we got done?
What's that?
What was the tech work we got done July to September?
Capital District Transportation Authority?
No, the tech work.
Sean, Sean?
Yes,
What was Sean's? He does all the IT stuff here.
Where is this?
On, this one.
Where is it?
Where's Sean? I just saw him.
Oh,
Sean Minotti's work. Where is it?
You're asking about Sean?
Yes.
Oh, he's our IT guy. It's by contract, he's not an employee.
okay.
So we pay him just about quarterly, although sometimes he tends to bunch it up. But normally we pay him quarterly. Other questions?
He's also switched out some of the, tech downstairs, like with the computer, so they're working with it.
Now, I would like to add one bill that's not here, that Joy couldn't add. A while ago, we had, we thought we should provide a stipend for Tom Bolger, who's been doing a fabulous job for the last
8 years.
years and years, without any compensation at all. We thought of a small stipend of $35 for each session that he did. He's our Shakespeare guy, by the way, in case, you were confused. That's one of our longest running programs, and it's very well attended. Maybe this is So sort of an incentive to keep town around. So what we're recommending is, we were recommending at the time $35 per session. But that was 10 sessions ago. So we'd like to pay him for those sessions through the Tempest and something else.
To Noble Kingston.
Yeah. So there's 10 sessions, so it'd be $350. Okay, the bill's all set? Any more questions on the bill?
Make a motion to pay the bill. Is that-
Well, to,
To recommend to the board,
that is-
Right.
is that- Okay.
it's complicated.
and then you get a second. You got a second. And then you have to prepare it.
Is everyone approved?
Okay, we're going to look at the income statement for the, I don't know. Um, This is basically, a budget comparison to date.
Okay.
And the year-to-date budget is a figure derived basically by dividing the total by 12. And then, and then, so it's not the final numbers of the budget.
The exception to that is the revenue, tax revenue, which
Yeah, we changed
is
a
attributed
couple of things.
in proportion to how it usually comes in, because you get big payments when, about the month after the two tax dates.
Okay.
The first thing I always look at is the tax levy. The income from the tax levy, which currently sits at 1.159. It's, this is about 42,000 less than the actual budgeted amount. Usually we receive, another check in November, another check in December, and another one in January, which actually covers December, so they're always like a month behind. I did talk to city controller, and he didn't feel that there was any issues, any need for concern with tax collection at this point.
I just had a question on this one that they gave us,
What then?
the general ledger with the tax levy.
Oh, that's what we received today.
Right, but when you look at this, the 26,234 you have under current year only, the whole amount, rather than you don't have any prior year.
Well, this is divided by how we received it.
Right, but shouldn't it match
The
up?
actual tax payment. The 26,200 was for this year's tax.
Okay, but on here it's divided into two different.
Okay.
So here you have 25 for this year and 1,000 for prior year, and here you have no prior year for this one, and it's all up here currently. It doesn't-
Yeah, oh, I see, she put it all in there. But she didn't put it in the other one.
So it's all in here.
Right, yeah, she put that 26,2 all at one,
Right.
which is not. You're right.
Okay, So this is correct. I got it.
Basically,
This was the correct one?
$1,000 was prior year.
Okay.
taxes. That's that last payment we received. But normally, it's definitely.
I just wanted to make sure I'm looking at this correctly.
Okay. Trying to think, revenue. Expenses were running a bit behind in the payroll. By actually about 40,000.
In the business administration side, we seem to be a little off on several of these.
What that?
In the business administration side, year-to-date actual does seem to be
Yeah,
higher than year-to-date budget.
We are higher, yes. Sometimes. This might reflect. Yeah, this reflects not exactly the budget because it reflects purchases made with grant funds. So like the hotspots and that sort of thing actually was because we have grant funds, but we have to report it here, as an expense. But it doesn't always actually correspond with the initial budget. The gas and electric is pretty well on target, but I must say they keep warning me that it's not gonna be next year. And I probably on the budget.
I saw something projecting a 33% increase.
What's that?
I saw something projecting a 33% increase.
Yeah, the gas prices are going up by a lot.
Yeah,
But-
but that's about a third.
Stuff we didn't know. I mean, way back when we did the budget. Any other questions on the expense? One thing on the expense side that might be a little confusing is her expense total actually includes capital projects, which are basically grant funding. So the number 1,624,000 is high. What it would be without the capital projects would be 1,066,000. So that's one reason that comes out way over budget. That's the main reason. Yeah. Included here was the credit card statement. Part of this is a little higher because of some camera equipment that Andrew has purchased through a grant. We had a grant for program, through CDRC. So that's why that's a good point. It's a reimbursable grant too. So. Also, if you want to take a look at the reconciliation. These are basically the accounts that we have. And just a summary of balances. Now, she also has the summary of the accounts as a second sheet. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the accounts. The construction account restricted is funding that we receive for grants. That is for those grants alone and for that purpose. The construction account unrestricted is basically funds that we have to match those grants. We have a separate account for the reserve request. And then there's an operating reserve. Now that operating reserve is basically funds that are invested in the investment account to keep our balance below 250,000 in the operating account. Or at least usually. Any other questions on that? No, just about it.
Any other questions? Maybe Fred will say. Okay. And other questions we do, except, we have to, approve the treasurer's report and increase of and revenue increase, but we've never done it here. Okay. We're just on the bills, so we all compensate.
Yeah,
If you don't mind my saying, is usually when you put it together, the credit card piece goes right on top, so that it all includes that. And then Bob used to just say for a total of, and you just say how much everything, how much we're actually losing at the end. Okay, and I'm sorry that I didn't. But it's just something that I have.
Okay.
And basically, then if there's no other questions or anything else we have to review, we can adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
You can make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. I'll get that.
So we can come back in an hour or so. Yeah, Bill, I don't know if she's gonna run all these checks tomorrow.
Maybe the Senate.
Might
Oh, okay.
might not be right away.
At 10.
What's that?
I was supposed to be here at 10, so.
Okay, good.
To look at this stuff,
Yeah,
so maybe by then, better. But then I'm gonna be here for 11,
Yeah.
so I'll be here for 11. I can do whatever.
Thank you, by the way, this lighting is so much better.
It is.
Yeah, wow. I can keep my eyes open.
And then if this is comfortable for you, and I will say that if you are meetings, even our committee meetings here.
Well, I mean, I don't want to have to dictate it, but.
No,
more
You're
comfortable.
not dictating, it's trying to make sure you participate.
Well, I appreciate it,
As long
but
as
it is, it's a world of difference.
Yes, so this is, I never go down and reserve for
Yeah, because I was.
first.
Yes,
Hey.
yeah. There's, same as at a premium.
In fact, oh, excuse me. I'm gonna discuss. Quickly. We have December here, I read that reserved for this, you know, 20.
Right.
But
My favorite today. Doctor's appointment. I had a Tai Chi and then a doctor's appointment. Same lesson in here. Really not time except for that truck that was snapping. Road, street, I mean, how can they do that? You just block the alley.
Was it a city truck or?
No,
Just a private truck?
no, it was a, facility services, Cintas.
And maybe, is it, or could be one of the guests?
Right.
We stop recording. Let's stop recording until we go to the regular meeting. Did we stop recording when we adjourned the finance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. How you doing?
Yes.
Ah.
Ending on the. And I know, and I checked it over, I think it's, you just. Yes, I was looking at the front. And you're checking again, a week from tonight. And you're available. No, I'm saying Tuesdays is so smart, so it's just, so, I have to catch up with Ronnie too, because it would be good to keep it all on Friday.
Oh, wonderful. didn't want to print.
I know. Some 11 by 17s in there.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, she said she was flying back. I think it was-
Yeah, so things that takes us a long stay. I was thinking sometime not long ago, remember how you were going to use it?
Very Catherine.
But I have somebody coming.
How did you get stuck with it?
Somebody sitting here.
How did you get stuck with it?
Well, that's- it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. What? How
We haven't heard anything about the application. No, we haven't got final approval, but we got mostly approval. Really? Okay, I don't know that. Oh, yeah, no,
I saw you when you
Is it
did it.
the-
I didn't want to interrupt.
Fully funded? Was that fully funded? Yes. Not for evaluation.
And I was there. Sending the rest.
8250. Yeah. That's awesome. Good job. Yeah, so wow. The biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
And every hurdle, come on.
Yeah, I was there for two.
Well, the trick got there.
Is this the one for the Americans?
Yeah. Kind of last minute.
Right, right.
Yeah. Right. I think I got, the information I needed, sorry, about a week before.
Right.
Is somebody sitting here?
No one's
No, I'm not
that's
sitting
just
there.
the online setup.
Pardon?
No one's sitting there, just the online setup.
Okay, I'll just kind of slide over a little bit. That's all right. So we're gonna run through. We're gonna run through these couple of these things on the agenda real quick here.
Well, let's see.
Are you ready to go or do you need?
Sure.
time?
No, we're good.
Okay. Does anyone have any issues, problems with letting our guests go first? And then picking up the rest of it?
I
Okay.
gotta go over there.
What?
I gotta go over there. So we're the guests. I assume that you have to go first. Right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, we're starting recording again?
Doesn't it say recording?
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it's recording.
And I'll say we had some new board members who had an opportunity to look at the report, but there's a lot here, so I think looking forward to hearing more about it. Any questions? Please.
And who are the new board members?
So what
Carolyn Bailey.
What are the ground introductions then?
Larry Wilson, principal at Mesa Cone Wilson Baker Architects.
Gina Blanas, project manager for this project at Lisa Cohen Wilson Baker.
Evelyn Greenstein. Brianna Clark.
Carol, Baker.
Keith Slopsky.
Marie Gavazzi.
Jerry DeSoto.
Motion, go ahead.
Please, Matt's a member of the public.
Excellent, thank you for coming.
Board member of Friends.
The library.
Well, we thought,
I'll say one more thing, your consultant is not here today, but you want to speak a little about that?
well, we had two consultants that are not here. Just time and the amount of space, that we figured we'd try to represent them, but Alex Cohen from Aaron Cohen Associates was our library consultant that participated with us and really ran a lot of the public interface, the meetings, the survey that was done, which was a pretty extensive effort in its own right. And then Alex worked with us on the programming. And then quantum engineering is in here as well, a report on the mechanical and electrical systems for the building. And Kurt Wilson was the principal in charge of that. He's not here as well, though I think we can speak to most of what those consultants, their efforts. If you need something that we can't answer to, we can follow up on that. And we thought we'd work together, Miss Gina and I, and she's gonna start and then I'll pick up and, right?
Okay. The report, as you've all seen, begins with a brief summary of the history of the library, which started way back in 1799. But it took about 100 years before this library building was actually realized and constructed as a fireproof building. It was intended to be the library, an art gallery, and a museum, and have a large reading room for the public. And that's what this building functioned as for a number of years. Over the years, there hasn't been many changes to this building, right? The footprint of the building remains very much the same as it did back when it was first constructed, minus the basement, which has had some modifications for staff offices. But really, the majority of this building is original as it was constructed, and it's constructed really soundly, and it's really quality materials, the marble, the stained glass, and all of those provide this architectural quality that not many buildings have, and something that needs to be restored. We started this report by doing a survey, and that was an exterior survey that was conducted by a drone to get roof conditions and parapet conditions. We also laser scanned the entire building, interior and exterior. And that created a base set of drawings for us to work with and to record the conditions that we found. On the exterior, the parapets were of the biggest concern. They're failing, the structural integrity of them is deteriorating, and there's been some measures to take care of them and to remove elements that are dangerous, but there's still a considerable amount of work that needs to be done with them, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But we also found that the roof is at the end of its useful life and also should be replaced. That's something that we recommend be in conjunction with the parapet restoration. And then there is some marble deterioration on the exterior facades, repointing that needs to be done. All of these exterior conditions that we found have been prioritized into different phases that we see are critical, need to be addressed immediately, high, medium, and low. On the interior, the exterior, we also have diagrammed all of the conditions that we found. And you'll find that in the report in these fold out sections, which illustrate every condition that we noticed on the exterior. The interior, we did the same thing. We went through room by room and looked at each wall, floor, ceiling, and made comments about what needed to be repaired, what kind of condition everything was in, any cracks that we noticed. And again, this is also documented in diagrams in the report. Each of these interior conditions that we noticed have also been prioritized into critical, high, medium, and low categories. And that you will find in the report as well. After the library modernization study, which is the schematic designs. During the recommendations, we went through and did a code analysis and listed out several items that need to be addressed when there are construction projects that are going to occur. Egress is one of them, providing a second means of egress with a addition of a back stair so that everyone can get out safely from the second floor. Sprinklers is another code issue that came up that will have to be addressed during construction of any major project. And then let's see, and then we get into the different costs for the repairs, and we broke that out by first addressing what we were saying is the base scope of work, and that would be taking care of any conditions that need to be repaired, fixed, parapets, roofs. All of those costs are listed in here. And then there's a second set of costs which will address really the modernization part of the study, where we propose different design options, which we'll get into in just a minute, and any additions. And so those costs are also illustrated in the report as well. Wanna talk about
Sure.
different things?
Right, so after the itemized maintenance and repair items, really that Gina mentioned, parapets and, well, actually included HVAC upgrades, electrical upgrades, and different sprinkler systems. But in addition to that, we went into full modernization plans with programs that were derived through working with Alex Cohen, but also interviewing the public and the staff. The staff had quite a few comments. We've come back and responded, I hope, to their concerns that have been brought to us in earlier plans. I want to point out that it's tricky because we give you the first set of prioritized recommendations with costs, which are really things that are maintenance mostly oriented. But what the building really is going to require, it's going to be hard to just do those. I mean, if you're just giving grants here and there and do them, you can do them piecemeal, I suppose. But at some point, you may have difficulty getting a building permit just because of the occupancy egress issues associated with the use of this building. The second floor is inadequate in terms of egress capability. There's only one means of egress, and it's an open stair, and it's basically public assembly space that could could hold a lot of people, and we've done an analysis of that and determined what we'll get into that, what the solutions to those are. But my point is that continuing to do maintenance is important and critical, and we should keep doing it. But at some point, addressing some of these core issues of public use and safety are going to be unavoidable and really should be addressed. And so to that end, we really created what we call a phase 1 modernization plan, which I want to say addresses most of the aspirations of both the public and I hope the staff in terms of program. It also addresses the code issues and brings it up to code compliance, but it tries to stay, I want to say modest if you can, or as modest as you can be with fulfilling those goals. Phase 2, and we call them phases because you could build on them literally, or you could do phase 2 all in one project, but phase 2 could be done initially right out of the gate, or it could be the extension after phase 1, which is to expand the footprint of the building to the rear and actually infill the courtyard, which would be a wonderful space in its own right. So maybe I should just go through the phase 1 and then the phase 2 plans. That sound like a good plan, so that you can see what we're talking about in terms of those. I'll try to do it quickly, ask questions if you want, but so these are color coded, and basically the sort of purpley areas are circulation areas. So we retain the front entrance as the main entrance. We looked at bringing the handicap as it is through the courtyard, or entering from the back, or developing the south side for the entrance, but we kept bringing back to the main entrance as being the main entrance, and I think that we are able to fulfill ADA accessibility compliance and maintain the front entrance as the entrance, and I think that's a good thing to do. We have to reverse the direction of the doors for egress purposes with parent hardware. We have to put a ramp and or a lift. And we can do that by stealing some of the space that's now the children's library and modifying the structure so that we can ramp up to the entrance level around these steps. It actually involves pulling the steps forward. There's some work to do in achieving this. It's not simple, but it's doable. It gives you a fully ADA compliant entrance to the building using the main entrance, and everybody, including wheelchairs. This is actually showing a step. It shouldn't have a step. It would be square. The landscape would swell up to this, or a short ramp next to it. But that's not very. We can do that. That's there. That step should be there. But anyway, this will give full compliance to entering the building, and we've maintained that in each of the plans. What's called, then there's the sort of the yellow space, which is flex space that can be used for group settings. It's very flexible. You can do all kinds of things with this, and that was talked about with Alex and with staff and so on. There's a lot of possibilities for just using this, but it is the main security checkpoint for coming and going from the library. We have also. It was a strong aspiration, I think, in the discussions to try to maximize meetings, public spaces, meeting spaces to serve the public as a core function of this library. One of those is to actually put the meeting room where Paul's office is and the subsequent adjacent office, which was originally a single room. It was divided in later years. But to open that up again, it has the fireplace and so on. It could be a very nice central, right off the entrance meeting room for the public. Don't have to go into the library to get to it. It's kind of optimal, it's a nice size.
It could be used after hours, after the library closes.
You do, by the way, still have to get to the men's and women's room, but you could lock off this and keep this space, those spaces, open. But the convenience as well, is really good. But in doing so, we've displaced Paul and some staff. In this plan, we've actually taken the entire southern swatch of the building and dedicated it to staff. What remains in the children's rooms, library, staff area with files and Paul's, the meeting room for Paul, the director's office, and also staff in the adjacent area that is currently book stacks. We have a whole discussion about book stacks, but this is very flexible. We could grow or shrink. Young adults were thinking in here because they need some supervision, probably. They're separated from the children's library, but near it, and also near staff, so there's some supervision. But these staff areas are something we'll get into more discussion about in a minute. But really importantly, we maintain the elevator to all levels, and we actually put an addition. I said there wasn't an additional footprint of the building in this first stage, but there is, and that is a rated fire stair at the rear of the building that allows egress from all floors to the rear and out. So this is a core element I want to do for the future of the library for public safety. Yeah, so associated with that is the challenge in a lot of ways in this planning was, especially where we're not, more modest version where we're not putting addition on the building, was where to put children's room, because our consultant and also the public, we're coming up with large square footages, 3,000 square feet plus for a children's area. Right now it's like 800, right? So a radical increase in size of the children's library is an aspiration. And so our task is to try to solve that problem in a library where there's only one room, that's the main reading room, that even comes close to providing that kind of area. And I think there was a lot of resistance. It seemed as though dedicating, the main reading room to children's library could be done, but it was not the direction I think that we're planning. Rather, what we decided to do was, when you come in, the main entrance of the building, we would develop a staircase that goes down to an area, I want to say basement, but really we'll raise the floor. It's the rear of the building is split level. The rear of the building is more or less at the level that we would, they'd come down that stair to that big space. It's now basement, but there'd be windows all through here, and it's we raising the floor. I can get into the section, show you that about 2 feet, but we're also developing a children's garden in the rear. So it's windows, it's very, very well lit. It's east facing, a lot of windows to the south with a garden. So, and it's one space in the library that allows you a pretty large, uninterrupted floor area that could be developed for the children's library. It doesn't get you up to the whatever 3,500 square feet. I think it's 1,900. Is that right?
Yeah, it's close to 2,000.
Right. And so in phase 2, you can always put an addition under there. That's the garden in this scenario. You could put an addition under there and make it and really get a large children's wing that's 3,000, almost 4,000 square feet probably. And, so that could either be done right out of the gate, or it could be phased in over time. But it also was expressed that it's best not to have the children's room right next to the main entrance to the children's library, right off the main vestibule, really, just for security. So when you come in, you go through security, go through past the desk, and visually, you're looking straight ahead, and above are the book stacks, but down, you go down and see the windows, and this is all open to that children's room below.
So it'd be very visual and would draw you forward and down into that whole wing, but it would be separated from the main entrance or remote from the main entrance, which was another part of the program. Desire. We also put some more staffing down here. This is not as good as spaces as the staffing on the first floor and back here, but there's we did a calculation this recently. We're exceeding the existing staff capacity by a lot.
Yep.
I don't have that number in front of me, but there was some concern that we're actually less capacity, but we're increasing the capacity fairly substantially in these plans.
I think it was, going to come ahead, is on 20% increase for our staff, working spaces.
And I think there's some flexibility in that too, as to how you can expand the trial. So the other aspect of this is in developing that staff space in quality first floor main room locations rather than in the basement, which I think was not as desirable. It meant really what we chose to do in this plan was to take the archive or drawing room, which is in this quadrant of the southeast corner of the building now, and in developing this whole staffing scenario, we've removed that from the main floor of the building with where there are windows better for occupiable space, arguably. And we've located it in the basement. We believe we can take these, we have it here, we've gone back and forth more at this point because of the access from the elevator past staff areas, so there's control. We tried to develop a scenario where we can maintain control of who's coming and going from it, but also have access from ADA compliant elevator. We believe we could take the space and relatively easily provide temperature humidity controls within the space that maintain a constant, archival quality space for the collection. And we don't think that the archive storage, and we don't think the building is best served by putting that kind of space where you don't want ultraviolet light, period. Better in that location than putting people in spaces with windows and spaces. That's kind of the rationale behind that scenario. And so otherwise mechanical rooms and so on down in the basement. And then there's the second floor, main meeting room and over there. So the reading room, there was a lot of discussion of this reading room and its function, but maintaining it as a reading room, as a public space to come and use the library seemed to be important, but also to make it, depending on how you furnish it, with some lounge areas, some areas of tables and chairs, but also you could take the space by putting a really good storage facility associated with it. You could transform that space into a lecture hall or music venue, any number of different functions where you could fit. I think we had 180 people up here for a gathering function. Could be a wedding, it could be any number of them, but it is a subject only to the program and capability of the library. It's just, as long as I think you have egress capability, accessibility, it then becomes a very programmable option. But on a daily basis, it's still the library. And so I think that was a good sort of medium kind of compromise where you maintain it for multiple uses, really. The other thing that we've done with it is to take the rooms, or in this room and now, the meeting rooms. This had been a meeting room as well. It could be, but in order to serve this function, you really need somewhere to put tables and chairs and that kind of thing. But what we've done is we've actually created access separately. We put a doorway here so that we can put doors or block this off. Either doors would be better because you could use either combined room, or you can block it off and use it for separate meetings. By putting a separate access point here into that room. And also up there, adjacent room would have access from that into here. We need to put some toilet facility on the upper floor, we're putting most of the toilet rooms on the first floor, men's room, women's room. We did a capacity count and came up with a number of units required, and this represents that. I would argue it would be nice to get more. We actually have two here. But I don't know, I think the two would make them accessible.
Yeah.
You can, I think, put two smaller ones and leave accessibility. But anyway, there's some variations we can get into up here, so.
Want to talk about phase 2?
Yeah, I do, but I just want to maybe, we'll talk about phase 2. So phase 2, the main difference here in phase 2, again, is that we're adding things, so we're going another step further. Put a wing on the back of the building, it could be one, it could be 2 stories, potential is very expandable back there. You've got over 20 feet, 22 or 3 feet back here by the width of the building. And this we're thinking would be an extension of the children. If there was a second floor, it could be more staff, and maybe that we have the young adults up in this area. Young adults could be above here, and maybe a looking stair between them, kind of thing. There's an idea that this stair to around. So there's a lot of potential in developing the addition on the rear. As well.
I didn't know if we should.
Rooftop garden, I mean, there would be a roof here, so it could be a garden, so you can go out onto this, or another floor. There's so many possibilities that, it's just a matter of funding, really, is but the other really interesting thing, I was tempted to put it in the base plan, but we didn't, but to infill the courtyard, and this is showing this as a meeting room. But maybe we can find where it's not. We have other plans in the report, just these. I mean, the other scenario is the meeting room. Yes, you can fit 75 people in a meeting in there, but on a day-to-day basis, it's just the idea is it would be glass door here, and probably a large skylight. So it still feels like a courtyard. And I would argue you want to have a fountain there because you want the trickling sound of water, but it could be a sort of a 4-season room where you can go out and feel like you're outside year round. It becomes a very comfortable space or adaptable to a meeting. That has a lot, in my opinion, a lot of potential for the people. And it's right off the main first floor space. We have to build a floor because right now the courtyard floor is kind of a halfway down level from the main floor. So we have to, the idea is what we would excavate, put a basement under there and build a first floor to be level with the main first floor. And then we would, again, put a roof in the skylight and windows here. We did have some renderings of that in
Yes,
the
in the
report.
report.
I don't think we brought that with
Yeah.
us, but they're in the report if you haven't seen them. So I think that's a real asset, almost a no-brainer if you have the money.
Well, what helps with that courtyard addition too is that at the basement level, you then gain that extra space, which allows for access into the toy room, but then also allows for additional staff space. And so mechanical space would be up in here, but that courtyard addition at the basement really does gain a lot of access to the staff.
And then I guess what I just section. So in addition to these plans, staff.
Oh, staff, yeah, right.
So, so book stacks, there are 4 levels of book stacks right now. And they're very dense, very tight, low ceiling. The stairs are dangerous. Glass floors intimidate people.
A lot of hidden spaces.
Hidden spaces, they're a problem. They were very innovative in 1898, but with the reduction in need for stack space and the density of that space, it's just a big, sort of albatross in the back of the building, if you will, that is difficult. That said, I know in the past, and also in the public hearings we had, there was a pretty strong aspiration, I guess, to try to not destroy them, to say that there's a lot of sentiment towards them, there's a lot of history there, and people's, they're part of the architecture of the building too, which is part of the whole history of this complex. And so we're kind of torn. You could just take them out and put floors in there, or what we've tried to do is come up with a scenario here where we maintain the basic components of the stacks, that is all the steel, metal, cast iron elements, even the glass floors, and we maintain the essence of it and the materiality of it. But we've changed it in some very significant ways. So each of the stacks, more or less, looks like this on the rear, on the back of the building. It's that whole quadrant building at the rear, the stacks, one into the other down to 4 stories. That with the exception of the first floor, which is where the archives is. But on all the upper floors, it's this. Now currently, there are stacks like these, twice as many. We've taken every other one out in this plan. So envision, these spaces are twice as dense currently. What we're showing here is taking every other row of stacks away, which allows you somewhere just over 6 feet between stacks, which is plenty enough for a wheelchair, for comfortable browsing of books, if that's that, the notion also to put carrels along the windows on the back wall. This would allow people, we've done libraries where, it's very typical to find the carrels in these stack spaces are always occupied, especially in academic libraries, quite honestly. But, I have a feeling they offer a sense of privacy, a sense of immersion in books, in knowledge. I mean, there's a psychology to it, there's a physical immersion of yourself in the architecture, the books. But there's also, fortunately, here, there's windows, there's all windows in the back of this building too. So these I see as really optimal study in spaces. Now, a lot of concern came up with security too, and that has been brought up a lot. I think any scenario like this probably would require cameras to be located so that there's surveillance in spaces regularly. And they're a lot more open than they are now, which, so that should aid in that as well. But we think that people need spaces for contemplation, for study, and this is the perfect kind of scenario for doing that. Now, mind you, let me show you the plan first. In addition to removing every other row of stacks, we're actually, in effect, altering the vertical orientation of these stacks as well. Right now, there's only a 7 feet, 6. It's 7 minus the structure, so it's not a code compliant even height. So what we're suggesting to do, first of all, is take the first floor stack area away and open up that children's room, so you have a super high space for children, big tall space, windows out to a garden, with those stairs coming down into it. And then we would continue to suspend, as they are now, these upper stacks. We'd actually, you can see the dot line here, move this, because we've got rid of that floor, we can move this one down a little bit to get that code compliant height, and we can move this one up a little bit to get the code compliant height, so that we would maintain the armature, but we would increase headroom and increase the decrease the density. And in doing so, you maintain the parts and pieces of it, and the essence of it, but make it, and we'd also make it, fully accessible. The second floor is at level, so we get, you know, wheelchairs. The first floor, a small lift, stairs lift, that gets you from the first floor up to this, make that floor compliant. Or would actually have an elevator stop for the top floor, to allow us to get to the top floor. Because right now, this is the top elevator stop, we would have an elevator stop. And all of those levels would be accessible from the new fire stair as well. So, you know, a lot of effort would go into doing that. I think it would be, as I said, I would suggest we maintain all of it, including the glass floors. I think the glass coming through that east side with the glass floors, it would be very translucent, a lot of light coming through. I think it would be really a outscore the tower. What's this term for it? The tower books or something.
Tower books. Yeah.
But it would be really quite even right now when you walk in the main lobby, you walk in, you get that iron railing and you see the book stacks in the distance, that would still be here. So you see that, you look under it, it's the children's room, but you still have that sense of the book stacks as you come in the rear. So that, you know, and then we did a drawing, maybe complicated for people to understand that, you know, but lowest level children's wing with those stairs that come down, and then these 3 levels of book stacks. We remove the level of stacks, which we won't go from 4 to 3. So there's 3 levels of the book stacks, the fire stair in the back, and then we have to add to the elevator here. But that's the main components, and then the children's garden, which could be indoor in phase 2, indoor expansion of the children's room. Even a roof deck, if there's enough money to do that. Roof garden, but so those are that's kind of that's where we came down on these schemes.
So, and this rendering here, and that first floor of shelving stacks above the children's, is that the same as where the young adults section
Yeah.
is gonna be?
So the idea
It's
is-
really not all shelving.
The idea is actually, we took another, you can take them in or take them out. We took another row out. And made an area that would be, you know, you could put, it's very flexible, but honestly, you could do any number of things with them in terms of keeping the shelves or removing them. But yes, you're right, and we're showing this with, this was done earlier, but, that, technically that row of shelving would come out to make a space for children, for young children and adults, so.
Especially you recognize that when you look at this rendering, you look at the plan, and you look at that, and say, this doesn't make sense. I figured, happy to hear you're really.
Well, I think the whole
Those things,
thing,
yeah.
you're gonna have the shows, right? Because you're gonna have the meeting, you're gonna have the director, that whole,
Well,
Yes.
yes.
right? So it's really, we're going down to 2 floors, yeah.
Yeah, that's a conceptual, it's not.
We have a shelf with office or desk space in there.
The director's office.
Right,
Yes.
it's a conceptual scheme, but.
Okay, I was just kidding.
Yeah.
I get easy.
I'll say technically, what there is right now over here, which isn't illustrated, I guess it should be, is that this level here above on the first floor is a hard floor structure, whereas this is this system of storing books. This quadrant is a hard floor. We would keep it, retain it. In other words, so there'd be a block in here that wouldn't actually be shelves. That's hard construction. It's not even the same.
What if it's glass?
It wouldn't be the glass or it's not the bookshelf. And it would be hard. In that one. It's what's there today. We would just leave it. At that lowest level. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm just trying to, no, I'm trying to picture in my mind what is back in that corner.
The archives, the Troy.
Okay. So there's, okay. And then I had a question about the police. With the children's room, is there a bathroom for the children's room?
Yeah. There's a toilet here and a toilet here.
Okay.
Toilets in my school, the children's room.
And how do you get, is it only if you're walking down into the toilet room? Do you have to walk through this space or is that?
If you're going to the toilet, you're going to generally take the elevator, but there's no reason for you to take the stairs
Okay,
as well. You go through the children's room and doing so, but, we did have it down here, when we're adding a stair, we have a very complicated flat where we're adding an extra stair, over here to direct access, but it just seemed like it was getting complicated. And it didn't have, it required,
It didn't have ADA access.
ADA, plus people be going through staff areas, and it just wasn't working, so this seemed to solve all the problems. But yes, generally, we take the elevator, we could take the stairs.
The elevators are outside of the part of it, but then, so adults are gonna be walking through the children's room on a fairly, anyone who's going to the trial or downstairs will be going to the children's room.
Well,
You had mentioned you were thinking of a scenario and also how to monitor the trailer, so you don't mind going through that.
yeah, this maybe should be called children's, we want us to start here, this is access for the whole circulation, yes, so. You find these very plans. But yeah, but I think before this was developed, this was children, because that's all it was here, but then we developed this and we did remove children from here. But so this is really a circulation, you can have a door here, security, whatever. But you go, if you're going to, the archives, you come down and go through an area that's associated with staff, and the idea is that you have a gate or door, it could just be door. But you come in here and you have to get a staff person to give you admittance into the archive room, so it's controlled through that circulation path. Without actually going through a staff area, which was the other problem, the other point.
So they're not going to staff, but it's going to require that someone who's doing some of their background work, stop what they're doing, let someone into.
Yeah,
use
well,
it.
unless you don't want to, leave the door open, but
Well, no, it needs to be.
it needs to be done, so.
You got the current situation, someone has to sort of observe you go in, you can have that same person sit there, that's fine.
where they are now, that's a team, that's a, they do two jobs.
But then there's that out there,
No, it's reference, you're not gonna have somebody go downstairs, that's the reference question.
doesn't have to be reference, could be somebody else.
Well, where they are now, they have reference helping them, people that try to helping them on a regular basis. So it kind of.
It does, it adds a person, it does add a person.
Or change the role.
How would it change around?
Actually, someone else has to do two jobs, opposed to the reference person doing two jobs, somebody else doing two jobs. I don't know, that's a staff question, and certainly, I would defer to the director's recommendation on.
Someone comes on the elevator, function, and then going through this area. And just so you know, because again, you said you had worked out a scenario, are there any more specifics to that scenario?
Any other options?
Well, you had said, you had worked out a scenario for make monitoring and control of the room.
Yeah, well, I think that, so we had a different scenario before, and that, you know,
When you were presenting this, you said there were.
well, this is it, I mean, the scenario is
Okay.
ADA compliant access to the room. You don't have to go through, the comments we got that I responded to was, need ADA access, so we did that. The other one was, you didn't want people going through staff areas, literally passing through staff areas to get to the control room, which is what we had before. But you did want staff monitoring and giving, permission or admittance to people going into the church. So by bringing people past the staff area, by a lock gate or door, or however you want to handle it, or just a person, maybe a staff area is up here with a desk, or whatever, you have control of who's coming and going to the archives room without going literally through the staff area. That was our attempt to respond to those comments that we got in the previous one. Now, I'm not sure how to answer whether that is the right person to be at that spot or person in this area. Or does it, I don't know, maybe if somebody comes down and asks for permission to go in, there's a conversation on the telephone between the reference person upstairs or whatever. I don't know whether there's a way to handle that through other communications. And then go down.
And Carolyn had asked about that, so someone in the children's room is going to have to walk out, like. Where's the bathroom? There's one there. Okay, so, so the other purple is no longer children's, so they're walking out.
Well, we could probably put a children's.
It right by the.
Somewhere in here, we could, yeah. that's probably what we're saying.
With that stairway, that's not shown as enclosed, how are you gonna be able to do that? You planning on, that's the only way that works is with sprinklers?
Okay, so that's a complicated question. We did scratch a lot of. Here's the section.
But it's the upstairs or code stairs, right?
Pardon?
The up here, code stairs or code stairs.
Yeah, the closed stair is a closed stair, but it becomes a question of,
There's now that opens up.
right, so the issue is the first floor and the second
Smoke
floor.
travel.
Right, first floor and second floor are not separated.
Mhm.
Which in the sprinkler building, we can do, we have to put the smoke screens above the stair to control smoke, but we can leave the first floor and the second floor atmospherically linked by code with sprinklers, that's okay. So once we do this, all of a sudden it's, oh gosh, now we have basement first and second floor linked atmospherically, theoretically. Is that a problem? It gets into a code nuance, and that is, this could be considered for the first floor. Right? I mean, yes, there's a transition in the steps, but no other part of everything else here back is separated from the basement. And there's a mezzanine, which is legal. Yeah. My point, we can argue the nuance. If it's a problem, and if the code official doesn't like my explanation, we can put a gate across here. Like a smoke from one of these gates that
On the alarm, it's, yes,
alarm that goes on.
yes, I'm familiar with
So
that.
that's an easy solution.
Yeah, sure doesn't do nuance well on purpose. Just put that out of your mind.
All right, well, so I think there's an answer to the question, it's not an expensive answer, maybe just do it anyway, but we did contemplate that for that actually.
I just want to talk about the children's, the children's room. You have the stairway going down, which is off the main first floor room. And I'm thinking about fire. Is there another egress for the children?
Oh, yeah.
to come? How do they get out?
Children are at grade, there's doors right here, there's a go out, they go out the stair. They're actually just the door exit.
But then are they protected from people coming in? Which is the concern about it being in the front is that.
Well,
it's
people will be
closed.
coming down the stair and there should be a door here, that's how you get to the street, to here. So people
You can't go in that door.
You can't go in that door. Egress.
this is egress to the children.
Lock from the exterior.
And then if you have, so any egress doors in the children's area will only be going out, not coming back in. Is that it? So people
Well,
can't
if it's
get
a garden, if it's a space that's developed for children's use, I want to think back in, but the security and how you.
You would have to fence it.
And then you have to be secure to garden. So
Yeah, I think you could have to have a gate around this with security. I mean, there's a lot to this. This is these are we're big, broad concepts. So there had to be a gate, and probably a gate, locked gate going to the sidewalk here.
the
but-
spikes on the top.
You could make this very appropriate. You could put lots of doors along it and have it very open and very appropriate.
Yeah, I just want to be sure people don't climb over the vents. and all that stuff, you know.
Or not, it could just be a locked door with this egress. So that-
Oh, and the other question I have is, if you take stacks out, will there be adequate storage for books? Where will the books go? That we need to store?
Well, we still have, 2 levels of stacks in the book stack, not counting the level that now we have the stack into, young adults, but we also, Alex's solution really is put books throughout the library, put book stacks in rooms, in the main reading room, and there's lots of wall space for books in this building.
There could be shelves and stacks within the children's library and then around the main reading room.
So I think there's enough potential to, it's never, I don't know, it's an ever-changing number. I mean, what your collection size should be, and what it will be in 10 years from now, and, but there's a lot of potential for, I think you could easily accommodate what you need by dispersing it throughout. And still having some of those things. Instead of 4.
Will that be a bit more of a challenge for the staff to find the books that they disperse throughout the place?
Rather than a centralized book stack. Yes, I think that's true.
So for the diagrams, I know I don't have much imagination. For the ramp in the front. So I can see where it would be internally, but how are you going to get it if the doors are over there? How do you get the entrance to the ramp?
Come in the front doors, take a right.
Yeah, you're right over there. So the stairs are right now, right when you walk in, those would be pushed back to allow for room for the floor at the same, like double entrance. And then the ramp up, landing, ramp up.
So somehow you're going to take out the stairs that are, let's go out to the outside. So there are stairs on the outside.
Yeah, we would.
How-
Grade would have to be modified on the outside to allow for the sidewalk to come up to the entrance doors, or a
Or worse, a short term.
a short ramp onto the side.
So with that, you've created an airlock there. You've got a door to the sidewalk, you've got doors to the lobby. And both of them are gonna have to have the electric assist.
Yeah, but you want an area on the building this environment. That's almost good. You want the best of But
Staircase up to the-
you'd have them motor driven.
So the outside stairs are either graded or there's another ramp. You come in the front door, which is elevated
Out,
This
the
way
way it's
down.
supposed to be. And then somehow taken out some of the stairs that lead up to the lobby.
Well, we take all the stairs out and build new ones for, because right now, they're right up against the doors. There's hardly any space.
Right.
By my stair and door. We demolish the stairs that are there, pull them back and build them new, giving you about, whatever, 8 feet between the door and the first riser. See? And then, so you come in and collect yourself and decide what you're doing. You go up the stair, you can wheelchair, you can also put a lift in here, right here, or not do the ramp at all, just the lift. We have that option too, but lifts are intimidating to a lot of people, ramps are better. So,
They're breakable.
but the ramp is actually occupying a portion of what is right now the children's room. Right now, the children's room is that whole space. So we would take a portion of that space and dedicate it to this function.
I would just not be able to visualize how you're gonna break into the marble, the side of the stair, the door, front door, where you get the ramp.
We can do
Well, not encouraging break into the front marble. So what you're saying is those staircase, that staircase would lead everybody in, whether you're walking or in a chair, because everything else is going to.
I didn't follow that. Yes,
Yes, that is what they're saying.
I'm sorry, I didn't totally follow that. Yeah.
It looked like from just seeing it here, like, what do? Put another hole in the front so that there's an entrance. But what you're saying is that you just use this.
Yeah, this is all we're doing is keeping the entrance, taking the existing doors, and not kind of reversing them. So they swing out. Now, there's an issue, there's these iron gates that slide, that never do slide actually, but that becomes a conflict. You never be able to really slide it.
They do on the tour.
That wouldn't really be possible.
I've been Vienna White.
Right?
Like,
Unless we push everything out and somehow make them swing on the inside of the doors or something, maybe we could do that.
we don't do something, we do work.
But yeah, so you come in, those steps should be, when you come in on a wheelchair or not, if not, you go up the stairs, like you always do, only the stairs are a little bit forward. And we did look at the lobby conditions, and you'd have to modify the marble, I don't think you destroy it, you modify it. There's a way to make it work, so it looked like it was always like that. You might have to cut some of the marble and rearrange it a little bit. That could be-
You're talking about the exterior.
No,
Oh,
the
the
exterior, nothing changes.
Okay.
Within that lobby, there are the walls, the columns, the piers, and so on.
As part of your specialty is working with historic materials.
And would you have room enough for the ramp, the way they have to go kind of this way and that way?
Yes.
Is that? Space to do all that.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's rather circuitous, but we got enough distance to get us up there, that's what counts.
Yeah.
And actually, I believe that the ramp that's there now is not technically compliant application of ramps and stuff. And it's a backdoor entrance, the ADA requires, unless you have a very good reason, that people in wheelchairs enter the same entrance as everybody else, so that there's equality to the experience rather than being shown the back door. So this does that.
Now, the meeting room down here holds how many people?
It says 54.
54. And then you're saying this would be 2 rooms?
Yeah.
You make it
You
2.
could divide. Into
So could you also open it up?
Yeah.
So that, like, not just doors, like, so that an opening that's wider than this, so that the people in that room feel like they're in this room,
Well,
or not?
that's a big heavy wall. I wouldn't want to take, I don't know what it's bearing, but that's a demolition project. I mean, anything's possible.
I just, because we've done that where we had programs that people are not back there and they don't feel it.
Right. I think you'd look for a bigger room maybe in this.
Okay.
Because I don't think it'd be,
No, 54 downstairs would probably do it. And then you need to jump.
you know, you get a 40-yard.
So,
If we get the courtyard.
Maybe
Then option B.
underneath.
Right.
That's a nice thing, Andrew. I think there are a lot of various options for that kind of space in this plan.
Does anyone else have any Any questions?
I have some more questions, if you're not all about.
Yes, you can, you know, you can go on with other things.
Well, one thing I do. You know, your cost estimates. And it's critical and high. How did you define critical? And it might.
I define the parapet as critical because I think
Yeah.
it has the potential of things falling off the roof.
Right.
That's critical.
And I would agree with that, but I guess I was reading this like, well, there are things that I might call imperative, but critical. And again, it depends on the definition of critical. So the HVAC system. I think it's imperative, but I wasn't sure which my definition of critical. It's not about the fall into the street, it's, you know, the roof places it.
Well, I guess we were, the staff is very impressionable upon us. with that.
As was the public.
And the public, and our users, yeah.
Imperative,
And COVID also raised some of that priority in terms of ventilation.
Ventilation, yeah.
So.
But when you think about the work at the parapets and the roof work, which needs to be done relatively immediately, that all makes sense to tie those projects in together, because you're penetrating the roof to do HVAC work, and the time to do that is repair or, you know, replacing the roof.
Replace the roof at the same time.
So that's why HVAC is packaged into that critical phase.
It all depends on money. If you don't have the money, then you don't do it. I don't disagree. Maybe the HVAC should be under a high value of critical, because it's not life safety.
But some of these changes, it's going, if we decide to proceed that way with some of these changes, it's going to change the airflow sufficiently. We're going to have to mechanically assist it. And in certain circumstances, the HVAC does become part of your life safety system.
Yeah.
The other thing to look at, we're looking at our energy costs going up. Can we save a little money by modernizing?
Right.
oh, and again, I didn't say, it's not a question of whether it's necessary, when it's imperative, but that's what I was wondering, what critical.
So,
Like imperative versus.
yeah, a good bit of this, of opinion, just, you know, I actually, you're right, it probably ought to be under high, just because it's not life safety, but. As Gina said, it makes sense if you're doing the roof and you're doing the parapets, the penetrations, or you gotta make these, you know, the plan we have, I didn't get into it, I don't know if you want to, but for HVAC, there's a whole scheme there for what kind of system to put into this building. To have 3 options for that, and we had a whole meeting on that, I don't want to get back into that, but the point is, there's a bunch of equipment on the roof, and once you put that there, you're under the roof, you into the roof, you know, it's all tied together at the point. So, but if the money's not there, do the parapet.
Oh, yeah, that's fact.
In fact, it just got a grant. So, for part of it, for the start. From like something else.
It went to the first phase.
Tentatively.
It has not gone through the.
That's just such good news.
So we did, in some respects, we did a lot of the repairs on the roof, that were obvious. We combined that with the work on the north wall. So we had a roofing company come in and repair all that APDM roof, and I thought the life of the APDM roof was longer than 20 years.
EPDM is 20 to 30. 30 is the first of you do
pay
it.
extra for that. So there's, 20 is standard, fairly standard, and the 30 would be pushing it extra, and then sometimes 50% each paper is the roof itself.
Just with the repairs, I mean, what I'm concerned about is that, I can get grants to the parapet. I can't get grants for the roof.
But we're going to get grants from the HVAC, and then you tie in the roof with the HVAC perhaps. So that-
Well, it's possible, just that, normally.
But so many penetrations for the HVAC equipment, we have to do the roof part.
What is you put a whole new roof on and 2 years later come and, cut it all up and put, 1,000 holes in it.
Once you go up there, you gotta do it. And I've had a lot of experience with that type of roofing as a fireman and homeowner with the same thing on part of my house, as well as being on a board where we built the building with that type of roof. And you don't have a lot of options. It's pretty much an all or nothing proposition.
So I have a question, Dr. Ruth, because I was looking at part of what was said in the report, and tonight when you're going, it's like at its useful life, at the end of its useful life. What your kind of assessment of it was, that it was fair, that it just, it sounded like it just.
You just had a bunch of work done. It's somewhere between, it has lived its useful life, 20 years in the Harrington. It's lived that 20 years. You know, you could keep patching it for 10 years, there's no doubt about it, right? No doubt. You don't. Yeah, I think the only reason roof is critical up there is if you're doing the parapets, because you're tying it together, but you could keep patching that roof and get 10 more years.
Well, I guess I'm trying to put together the idea that rating is fair, you know, in the report, and then you're saying, and if you say like, just be fair, still have some. But it could be, again, you know, my idea of architecture is the
Technology.
Yeah, it's
I don't
my
think they're incompatible terms. It's lived its life, but that doesn't mean it's dead.
Well, inusable, like,
Kind of like us getting there.
replace a dark thing, it's like, I know my roof is lived its useful life, it's going, it's.
Well, it was actually changed because, like, when we started the project, you did a lot of work up there this last summer. All those parapets were redone, and there's a bunch of areas where the roof, you know, the flashings against the walls were tearing off and all was getting behind it. And a lot of quite a bit of work was done on it since we actually did the report. I mean, you can keep, you know, you can keep it going if you keep patching it. But it's getting old, but it's still working.
For now. As long as you don't try to get on it for anything. And once you do, it's, you know, we see this with Shannon. We see school districts every 20 years having to replace these roofs. It's not really a surprise.
Oh, no, I'm not surprised, in fact, I was surprised when you said it was fair. You know, but again, it's trying to coordinate that sort of terminology of fair versus.
Well, it's hard to say anything worse than fair when you don't have major leaks coming in the room. So, I mean, so it's working.
Well, part of the roof there too is the roof drains, which are, you know, clogged or undersized and also leaking. So condensation or leaking, you know, within the structure of the building. So
You can see that in the main reading room. There's good
That-
leak, you know.
that also contributes to the condition of the roof, because that would all be part of the roof repair.
Thank you, you talked, I know a lot too, but
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Take care.
cracks and internal cracks and all the tech you put in there. I mean, part of why we started this whole process of looking to do a historic structure report was make sure we weren't dealing with just anecdotal data, that we actually had some hard data on what was happening to the building besides what we already had gotten from the last architecture study. And it came up, I know, during the interview process about getting some information on what we see anecdotally, like are there cracks in the up the staircase? You know, as you go up the staircase, you can see cracks. Are they getting bigger? Are they getting more? Is it a problem? And going through this, and again, I'm reading it with I am an amateur, and I don't pretend I'm not. I couldn't see if there was any real comment on what you were seeing about some of the internal cracks and some of the.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I think if you look at descriptions of conditions which are tedious at best in there. It goes through every room, like, see the crack up there?
Wait,
That crack is pulled out in, the west wall of this room in that report. I mean, we do document all the cracks that we saw in the building and outside the building both. And, I don't, I have to go back, but I thought we stated this, but to the point, I think that the important thing in my professional opinion here is that this is a really solid building. It has a lot of the characteristic problems that a building of this age and type has. Not the least one of which is that there's no control joints in this building. In the modern building, every 30 feet, we're putting a control joint, so that when things expand and contract, they're controlled. They're expand and contract on a pre-made crack, if you will. You build a crack into the building, so that's what building's moving. Building this age, there's none of that. So there's always going to be cracks in buildings just from thermal movement associated with a building that doesn't have any control joints. But on our observation, there are significant cracks that are structural, in nature. Almost, well, except the roof parapets are almost all related to the excavation we did for the tunnel and this whole southwest particular quadrant of the building, and that crack specifically, where the building settled. And those cracks are old, they've been repaired multiple times. In fact, they've got these big tie backs. I think we have illustrations of those in the report. They've got big plates in the outside bolts with tie rods that come in 20 or 30 feet into the basement and are anchored well and clamped to the structural steel beams in the building so that it's restraining the facade. There were significant repairs done associated with the settlement related to that corner. There are cracks there. We're recommending, we made very specific recommendations to do with them. They don't have any appearance of being active movement cracks.
maybe that's what I'm asking, because I saw that, yes, I don't documented them. I know that in one of the paragraphs, certainly it's saying that it's due to probably the construction of the tunnel, and the aftershock, but it doesn't mean that that next step of, okay, that's how they were created, is it something that's going to continue larger or worse? And that's what I was looking for, and like I said, it could be there, and I'm not reading it. But from what
I
I'm
thought
hearing,
it, but I'll go back and make sure that I address that. That said, and I have looked at it, we've looked at it very closely. They, by all accounts, they stabilized that when they did the repairs. It does not have any of the telltale signs of continued, because when you repoint, there's going to be some hairline crack in the repoint, just thermal, as I said before. But doesn't appear to be, from the more recent repointed displacement, like separation and movement, do you follow me, of stone elements that would be an indicator that it's continuing to move out and move down. In other words, typically diagonal shift down. You would be able to see that, but it does not have those telltale signs.
Okay.
That said, the parapet's got 1,000 parts in it. I couldn't count them. I mean, I'm not trying to be dire, but and the reason for that is because they built steel into, like, the whole parapet comes down and has this whole armature of steel that is there to support the rotational aspect of these heavy stone harness members, and there's steel embedded in this masonry parapet, and steel is the worst thing you can put in, especially on paintings. Just raw steel and lots of it built right into the base of the parapet, and it's just expanding, because when steel rusts, it expands, and it's with huge force. You can't stop it. It'll move buildings, and it's pushing the parapet up, it's pushing it out, it's just rusting, and it's rust jacking.
I love that shirt.
And it's severe out there. And basically, you gotta take the parapet down and get that steel out and replace it with stainless steel and put it back. And that's really the only solution to that problem. So systemically flawed in its design that there's no other solution. And take the parapets down, it's really the only thing to do, hopefully rebuild them. So, as far as that goes, it's active, we can put monitors on it, and monitors will show movement. I guarantee it, and, we took some down on this, with the contractor that was working, Sabrina, right?
Yeah.
Because, and you could see all that steel really clearly in this, anyway. We already took some of it down. We got Sabrina to work with us to price out what, so some of the prices in there, we worked with Sabrina to price out the parapet, reconstruction work, and, they gave us estimates to do that work, and that's what the basis of that grant was from. So those numbers are pretty real. I want to say that those other numbers, if you want to get into numbers, there's so much to be still, these are so schematic right now that a lot will depend on a lot of decisions as to some of those costs. But I want to think that the parapet costs and some of those are a little more real and more calculated on the contractors.
So, and when you just said that about, if you put a monitor there that would show, you're talking about the parapet, you're not talking about some of the internal pieces.
Yeah, internally,
Yeah, they
this
can-
building is not a problem. I didn't see anything, I see those cracks, a lot of those right there. And I can tell you that crack is related to the movement of that side of the building settling off when the tunnel was built. And there's a whole series, every floor has that same cracking. And that side of the building moved historically. And so you see a lot of, and then you see a lot of small hairline cracks.
Like there is one as we go down the staircase. That's fond of that, I guess. It was also in here you started, you were talking about all the cracks and all the pieces missing in the glass doors.
And about stocks.
In the stacks. I would certainly guess that there was any problematic issues, safety issues, it would have been brought up, and so I'm guessing there are none, even though they're kept in crack.
Oh,
That's
well,
pretty easy.
well, the glass, that's like 1 inch thick glass, and such a problem. I think we did call it. Bigger problem is this. That's a bigger problem, because there are little shards of glass
In
that
the
held
reading
in the red came, and there's nothing, between it and you.
The main reading room is the one.
There's some pieces that were,
Cracks.
we did call that out.
Or missing.
In fact, that's a priority, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, high priority, repair broken, cracked glass and ley lights.
So your concern is that the potential some of the glass could actually fall out of the way.
There's nothing stopping it from falling down. If a piece on the roof that broke off and fell down and hit it, or
Or cracking pieces of glass for the floor that sort of stayed in the frame. Or
Yeah.
there cracks.
right, those floor pieces are glued down to and they're relatively small, an inch thick. And I just don't see those as going anywhere. You take a wrecking ball probably.
And we'll not do that. But yeah, certainly you see these pieces here, you can see already some vertical displacement.
Yeah, these worry me a lot more than the glass doors.
If you're worried about things on the outside, and the people who walk by,
Right.
it's dangerous in here. None of them.
There are a bunch of things to do here. One kind of,
Can I ask about the HVAC system that you talk about?
Mhm.
Are there other alternatives to use that, like the, what do they call them, the split systems or the, like the Mitsubishi things, or geothermal or any other kinds of, I mean, the city's talking about doing geothermal. Will that somehow?
Yeah, we talked about that with the engineer, and he addressed that at the meeting. If I remember correctly, there's a movement within the city to do a citywide, large-scale geothermal fields that would serve a broad swath of the city, I think is my recollection. And that's fine, but I wouldn't hold my breath. You wait for that, you know, I don't want to be skeptical or cynical. I think it's a great idea, just. In fact, I think the system, I don't want to say something that I should, but I thought the system that he's designed could be adapted because he did talk about, you could adapt, like if that came online, you could plug it in, if you will.
Right.
I don't know if it's as simple as plug it in, and maybe, and I have to defer to Kurt because I'm a little on my knowledge base here, but
But what about like the heat exchange, the fuel exchange?
Exactly, yeah, I think that's what if I remember correctly from that conversation, it was possible using a heat exchanger from the geothermal from the city to support new HVAC equipment that would be for heating.
right. For now, it would be probably gas-fired heating, but if it came online, you could switch it over to geothermal potentially.
But without geothermal, could we do the heat exchange or no? I mean, is that-
Yeah, geothermal, yes.
You don't need geothermal, you do the heat exchange. So do you?
No.
You could do the heat exchange for the units.
And then there's solar, I mean, it's possible, solar, since it's a large.
We could do solar, solar PV units. The thing is that if you look at the HVAC plan, what he's done is put a series of different units on the roof that allow you to, each unit would cover a zone of the building. So I think there was 6 or 7, there's a plan here showing different air handling units that are on, not air handling, heat exchangers, I think, on the roof. And so I think the problem is a lot of the roof up there, and there's big skylights on this roof. So there's not a lot of room up there. I think there'd be a lot. There's not, once you take away the skylights and take away these units that you put on the roof, there's not a lot left for photovoltaic collectors. Yeah. Here's the plan.
Seven units.
7 units up there. And if you look at between the white of the unit and the skylights, you know, it's just, you could put some up there, but it wouldn't do that much, I think. Wouldn't be efficient, I don't think. But-
So do you have any suggestions for sources of funding that might be possible?
Wow,
Alex shared something today or yesterday.
I'm sorry?
Alex has shared something today or yesterday.
Yes, he did. It's just today, Alex sent, did you get that? Yeah, the source of some funding. I don't know what the value of that was. You could,
I just thought perhaps with, your experience with historic preservation that you might be aware.
we've done a lot of granting projects in the relations. Maybe particularly with some of the money that I think is coming online, maybe from this infrastructure plan, I think there might be money available coming up. We really have to keep our eyes open for that. Because I have a feeling there's going to, and that's going to be probably tied to the Troy, government system and getting that. I suspect they're going to want to, everybody's going to have their hands in that till.
So I've heard,
what, say America's Treasures, this is an NHL designated building, so that wouldn't, we need to have NHL designation. for that. This is listed, but it's not an NHL. The state is often coming out through SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, is often coming out with grant money annually for different projects. And we've done tons of projects using those state EPF grants and all those grant money, but currently I don't know what's there. I mean, I have to look. They're always coming out with new rounds, so we gotta look at what's coming up, and those are gonna be, you know, $500,000 or $750,000, maybe, that kind of level. You know, multi-million-dollar grants are tough. Come on. There's quite a few, you know, 50,000, 100,000, maybe 200, and then some of the TPF is state environmental grants can be 500 to 700,000. The library, you're getting grants regularly to.
Yeah, that's the public library construction grant program, been around for quite a while.
But as Paul says, that doesn't cover everything, that's, there are areas that,
Right. All these grants, in my experience, need to be matched. That's it, and like the state historic preservation grants, there's different levels depending on which grant it is and what year, what round it is, but usually it's 50% match, you know, which puts a lot of people, you know, we've had clients who've gone after and gotten the grants, but were unable to use them because they can't match the grant.
So we have to worry about even 25%.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so, you know, we have grand plans, but how to fund it? I don't have the magic wand for that. And the grants are gonna be, you know, 100, 200,000 kind of levels, grants. And there are those out there, but they're a lot of work. I'll tell you, state historic preservation grants, we've done quite a few of them. And it's, you gotta, first of all, you gotta spend the money first, and then you get reimbursed. And you gotta go through a lot of hoops to get reimbursed for that money. You gotta, it's not easy. You got a lot of patience, and you have to pay for it first, so it's challenging, you know, it's really challenging. I'm not trying to be down here. I'm trying not at all.
no, I just, you know, wanted to avail ourselves of your
Yeah.
experience.
I think we should keep our eyes open for state triple grants. I think we should, library grants are forever, we should be looking at those. I'm not sure, I didn't get it, he just sent it today, I'm not sure what that grant that Alex sent today was from.
I don't recall where it's from.
And I'll give that some more thought too. Maybe we should make a list of these.
Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a campaign that will have to really develop and will be following for your. How, who we should be looking at, who we talking to, organizations you should be talking about. Support. Put together.
you know, there's also tax credit money, maybe.
Well, you don't pay taxes, so you don't.
Yeah,
There are ways though that it can be worked.
for
It's
not-for-profits,
not simple.
you know, if somebody gives you money, it's a not-for-profit. They can write it off on their taxes. So, and that can be substantial. I don't know if there is a problem. This is not owned by Troy. So this is a non-for-profit.
No.
No?
We're not gonna tell them.
No?
But the bonds are.
Friends are. What you can do, what they did for the, you can work at the cathedral, and what they did there is they made the exterior, the facade,
owned by a different or entity that's a 501c. And they were actually able to get credit for that. So they manipulated and it's gone out. Pardon? Right, yeah.
I don't think the issue is whether it's a 501c3, it's, the issue is that you don't pay taxes. And this municipal
Same,
or governmental doesn't pay taxes. So,
Right, but if you get
That's-
somebody who does
that's-
pay taxes to give
Right.
money,
So
they
I
write it
don't-
off
I
their
don't-
taxes.
So I don't think that that we would have to be a 501c3.
But in perspective, I mean, that's what we did with the East Wall, that was a sand grant. And that goes, you can go through your legislature.
Right, but this is different. What he's talking about is different, the historic tax credits.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't know.
you have to be a 501c3 to exercise that. I believe. It's not that the entity is paying taxes. You're not paying taxes, the libraries are paying taxes, but if I am the, benefactor, I can write those taxes off. On my, instead of me paying taxes, I'm giving you the money, and I write it off.
It's complicated from an accounting standpoint. There are organizations that specialize in.
I think we should maybe get some advice from a tax lawyer on that, actually, because I don't know the structure of the corporate entity here, that, how it relates to taxes, or whether it's would be eligible or not in any way, but, I tell you, a lot of colleges we work with are doing that in a big way. They'll get millions of dollars from people who write it off, who get 40% tax credit. You get 40% tax credits in a lot of these colleges we work with. And that's what funds a lot of these renovations of these colleges. Is people have a lot of money, and pay a lot of taxes, they give it to college, and they can write it off their taxes. Up to 40%.
To name the children's wing after so-and-so.
Right, name it after so-and-so.
And I was also wondering, do you have, can you give us any idea how much we should be spending on upkeep yearly?
Well, there's a difference between upkeep and you need, in a lot of ways, more than upkeep. You need to replace things and you need to make up for lack of upkeep. I mean, just general maintenance. What do you pay? It's $7,500,000 a year for general maintenance and upkeep. But that's not repairing the glass on your skylights and, putting HVAC in, or, repairing the parapets. I mean, those are capital campaigns, if you will. But, just as upkeep, maintenance and general repairs and upkeep. $100,000, I don't know what you pay.
Yeah, I think there's a sharp distinction between maintenance and historic restoration. You can get grants for historic restoration if you can kind of prove everything is part of the historic restoration. But I see nothing that'll give you grants for maintenance. And that's what they now classify the roof. Maintenance. Even though it costs you $100,000.
That's your annual budget right there, one project.
Then you use the right word, called roof repair. And
Well, no, we did that. I mean,
roof reconstruction, then all of a sudden that changes.
that's why I say there's a lot to do with how you formulate the thing, and we do that. I do that with every one of those grants. I mean, we're fixing the floor in the kitchen downstairs. That's maintenance.
Well, you're fixing,
But-
different than reconstruction.
Right.
Because of the nice word you got.
We use the right terminology and we put it in as historic restoration and good to go. But not everything works that way, you know, they're gonna say. That's maintenance.
You know, funny, little quick anecdote, you know, what's the difference between, you know, capital, you know, restoration repair project versus maintenance? We've done a very large project, the cathedral and all, basically rebuilt the north tower, all new stone on the tower. It was a huge project. 17,000 blocks of new stone, it was just a big, huge project. And after it was done, somebody came up to me and said, the tower looks so nice now that you've cleaned it. You know? $8 million, you know, later, you know, nice cleaning, you know. Cleaning is maintenance, replacing the stone is not. So people don't, there's usually.
Well, that makes it a job well done.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you put a new tower there, a new tower, and no one noticed.
Yeah.
Well done.
Are there any other kind of, at this point, questions and comments? But I had a very sort of quick one for not to be answered. I had asked once before about, you know, the comments in the back and the diagrams, and I do know you said they were thousands. Had you transcribed them all someplace, even if they weren't added to the report?
The comments on the interior survey?
From Alex? Comments from Alex? From some of the survey that we.
Oh, all the survey documents.
Survey
That's in,
documentation.
isn't that in an appendix?
There is, but I was under the impression it wasn't everything.
We have that from him. It's in, along with the.
There's a whole report that he produced just in that.
Historic structure report.
Right, it was the preliminary documentation.
Right.
No, but I
So we
think-
got this, I had asked if that was everything, and you said there were like a lot more. The implication was that there were more comments than added to the report.
I took pages of notes that day, and Alex had all of that information and took out most of it, so.
And there's some editing, is the point.
Yeah.
There's some editing, because a lot of redundancy probably,
Yes,
but he collected.
a lot of the
notes.
comments would start to repeat after a while, but yes, we went through that and collected the comments and then put them into this preliminary report.
All right, so there are, in a sense, there are more comments, because that's what the impression I got from your comment, that point, is that there were more than just didn't have them. in.
I
No,
think that's
Okay.
complete edited version, abridged version, if you will, there's. The unabridged version, which I don't know if you want to publish.
Well, we're going to publish it, but there's sometimes people come up and say, I've said this, and I can't find it, and as we look at it. And adjust what we're doing to those comments. I was hoping that, you know, to see unabridged, like when I get the CD, to listen to the cards, I always see unabridged. I don't go with the abridged version.
well, to get every comment that every person made,
That's what I was wondering if you
an
had.
impossible feat, those 5 sessions.
That's what I was curious about.
But we do have it from the surveys that were done.
All the
Well, I
surveys.
know we have here, it's just,
No, that you have the results, but not, we have the raw data as
Raw
well.
data, yeah, yes.
you have the raw data?
We have it, it's in the board,
In fact, it's all the raw data.
the raw data that he provided, yeah.
Thank you.
There was a lot of response to that survey, I was
Unbelievable,
amazed.
the amount of people that responded.
You did a good job, right? I think it helps that there was a newspaper article about it. I also think that it was helpful in terms of making what we were doing more transparent, so that people didn't feel that, you know, that it was being kept under wraps.
Right.
I think that was really important as well.
Well, is there more that, I mean, we've tried to respond to various periods of, I mean, if there's something that we've not provided you, that we should have, we should know that too, because. You know,
Well, if we have more questions or as we process, there was a bunch of process.
Yeah.
And try to get all those iterations.
This is a printed, now,
together.
the problem with the printed version is, this was made to be an electronic thing, so it has all this, the layout, the drawings all very horizontal. And so when you print it, you get a lot of these foldouts, which makes it super quick, but, there's a lot there.
Well, and you're also, have people reading it who aren't professionals, so it makes it even more difficult for us to fully comprehend this and so.
So you you're open to more questions.
Yeah,
Thank you for all the work that you've done. It's very impressive and I'm excited about everything that
Thank
you
you.
presented.
Thank you.
thank you very much. It's a great building, and very, it'd be awesome to realize some of this, I just think it'd be so cool.
I really-
Detroit deserves it,
I also want to thank you for your work on this area, your patience, your willingness to explore options and opportunities, present different approaches to things. So thank you for your
Thank you.
important response. Very helpful. And I think it gives you a tool to talk about next steps and plan for the future. This is very, I find it very helpful. Thank you.
And as you know, Kirsten, these plans will change 100 more times before,
These are pretty schematic. but,
it's a point in time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know to be available if we have some more.
Yes.
Just let you know.
We are absolutely, we just call or you have to get hold of us. If you need to present to the public area, or whatever comes to that, or whatever, let us know. Good to help. And I'll give some thought to this funding, maybe we put a list together. In fact, Eric just made a master list of
Yes.
funding sources for historic buildings. Eric works for us.
Occasionally, I'll get emails too that come in, right, I just got something from Massachusetts, so if that happens where something comes in that I know is relevant to this project, I'll certainly send it along. But yeah, we'll
Let's
look at
get
that
Eric's
list.
first, he just made, because this question comes up in every project.
There's a database.
There's a database, there's
I'm
a
gonna
company,
send you the link.
you buy into it for whatever, $30 a month, and they have a database of grants for historic buildings all over the country.
You can
Different
filter and
regions,
search.
so there's a lot of them are $20,000, $30,000, or, there, a lot of them are not big grants, but anyway,
There's a philanthropic database
right.
Mhm.
as well that called Turn. He sends out all of these grant opportunities.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I don't know if that's where I saw it or not.
But I think those are primarily federal.
Yeah, but I think you also had a link to it. For the philanthropic database as well.
Is there, you have an accountant that you work with for the library? I assume? An accountant.
Yeah,
I always say that because I would, I'm finding that some big sources could come from wealthy people who want tax write-offs. If there's any availability for, and I don't know the structure of this entity, but if you could get tax credits for people donating money, that is funding a lot of projects in a big way, not little, multi-million-dollar grant, people who have too much money and are trying to find a way to write it off. Anyway,
yeah, always wanted to tap into that. I think, I just had to say that, I've been looking at this building for 30 years. And, you guys, it's great to have another set of eyes looking at some of these things because, I couldn't figure out how to, some of the things, how to do some of those things. So it was eye-opening for me.
Thanks, Paul.
well, thank you all. It's been great. Okay. You still have more business to do.
Everybody get their start. Is there, waiting for. The preliminary draft, that's all I'm just here, but I guess we'll just have to see what change, but.
That's obviously not.
This is some pictures. So it will be.
Certainly,
Yes, we were. Under consideration of our revenue notes.
I've also heard that we should put the most current thing online. If we've got the old one online, we should replace it with the most current.
But I don't know, do you want to wait until the building committee meeting to make that decision?
We certainly can have it as a recommendation from the committee.
Okay.
What I say is my personal recommendation, not the recommendation.
Right, so that's what I was wondering before I said, yeah, I wasn't gonna say yes until. Okay, thank you. Next is treasury report. We get to report out our recommendation.
That we pay the bills.
Yeah, basically.
And would it be $50,756.80 paid in this year? Was it on the original? So I make a motion to
You make the
pay,
motion.
yes, to pay.
Any other-
Everybody in favor?
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
Okay. Just one thing. Okay, next up is our consent agenda. I do believe we've got minutes and the building committee and Upper Hudson and Trustees report are in there. We don't believe there's no administrative committee. No, but we're gonna have them separate. Yeah.
I so
Okay, do we have a second? All approved?
I'm confused, was the administrative committee report
We pulled that. That's
moved
what-
from the consent agenda?
Yes. Mhm. Hang on, regular agenda. Paul, we have each to approve. Number one is approving the staff members. You want to segue?
We do, we have two new staff members at the Adult Services Department. Deanna Harper, who received her master's degree at University of South Florida. And she's got quite a bit of experience. Her most recent position was at Siena College. And we hired Sharon Berg, who received her MLS at University of Albany. She has also brings some additional experience from a number of smaller libraries in New York State. And we welcome them to the Adult Services Department. They'll be working with first on the reference desk and doing other chores related to adult services.
And as part of our responsibility is we have the pleasure of approving Paul's hiring of these two individuals. So I will make the motion that we approve the hiring of Diana Kroger and Sharon Sher to the Tri-County Library. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in approval?
Aye.
Yes, okay, fine, excellent. Done. The I Love My Library event.
is coming this Sunday. At Market
books are in your
Block Books. This is an event that actually started a number of years ago, now sponsored by the Friends and cooperation with Market Block Books. This Sunday between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., all the books sold, 20% of the sales go to the library. And in addition, people have the opportunity, there's a list of books that sort of a want list for the library, and people have the opportunity to buy us a book at that point and still donate 20% to the library. So we usually do really rather well with that fundraiser.
Is there an opportunity to do any of it before or after that day? Because I won't be available that day.
I'm sorry,
Is there an opportunity for us? Will they give us a discount if we said, I want to buy these books for the library on a different day, but can you give them that same deal? Because I won't be there that day of the 14th, and I won't be available that day to do it.
Yeah, we've had people in the past who've done that, like if you know what books you want to purchase, if you call over there, go put them aside, I think they might take your credit card information and then use it the day of, or, you know, or you can write a check or something, like they have made arrangements with people, but if the sales have to actually take place on that day, so you can't do it, you know. So you would have to make arrangements before that.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll see if I can find something to do that. Just so you know, too, no bonus book cards or other discounts are available on that day.
They did right.
Oh, and curbside pickup is also available.
okay, forgot.
But we already did number 3. So Paul, you're back on again.
Hey, I'm back again.
You're back again.
I've already covered the news tab. We did get some good news about construction grants in the fact that they're going to be extending those deadlines for a year, even into the future. And they've already extended the other, we're still working on it 2019, 2020, and 2021. Now 2022. So it's kind of a, you know, it takes a while and it gives us time to, you know, get these things done. We are working on an annual appeal letter. It's sort of that time of the year. Marie had volunteered to write the letter this year, and she's done that, and we're kind of working on maybe a few revisions, but Marie did the heavy lifting, and we thank you for that.
I think you can spice it up a little.
What that?
I expect you can put in some figures about what we've accomplished.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are undergoing, we're being audited. Our workers' compensation is being audited. It's a random kind of thing. They select different places at random. It's kind of odd that they would select the library at all, so it's not much of a major issue here, but they want an awful lot of information, so poor Julie is overworked. And I also want to say that the holiday party is back after a hiatus of 1 year. It's Friday, December 10th. All staff friends, board members are certainly invited and encouraged to come. It'll be at the Polish American Club again this year. We always put on a great buffet, and for a mere $25, you can have a wonderful evening.
When do you have to let them know whether you're going or not? You know? And is it Virginia that you're letting?
Well, it's the 10th. They have to know 2 weeks before.
I believe it's November 30th.
What's that?
I believe it's November 30th.
Could be, which would be,
That's fine. You all got the invitation, and I know it's on the invitation to the, the RCP date.
And how do we pay for it? Who do we pay for it?
I think it was said to bring it to like the circ desk or to Virginia.
yeah, Virginia can take that. Yeah.
Or, I've seen staff members take the money and then give it to her, so.
Who would you make a check out to? Does it say-
For public library. The
Yes.
check would be
To
made
the
out
library,
for public library.
Right.
And they,
Yeah, because we'll have to write them a separate check anyway for the pay for the whole thing. So we'll collect, the money here.
and if and when you register, they were asking if anyone wanted to, offer to bring a dessert to the table, because that's not included in the dinner. To let them know who would be doing that. And tomorrow I'll be sending out another message about another, added fun thing that they're doing, which is the baskets. They're gonna do like baskets. Everybody that attends will get a ticket. For the different baskets. So I'll send out that tomorrow.
So if we don't want to bring a dessert, or we want to contribute some extra money to.
Sure, and no, it's not an obligation.
Right.
And there's
No, I
always
know, but it would be
plenty
nice
of
to-
dessert, so it's never a problem. But it was just one of the other requests that when you're, not if you're registering to go, just let them know if you were gonna bring them. Not everybody does. Otherwise, it'll be way too much. Anything else, Paul?
Nope,
Okay,
can't do anything.
Jerry, would this be a good time for you to give Elise a brief?
Yeah, I'll give a brief overview of what I've
That'd be great.
learned. We've looked into what it would cost for the library to join the retirement system for our share of it. And this is an estimate that they sent us.
I think every person, I think you need to get a copy of this, and everybody else's stuff.
Thank you.
Oh, what a copy of what? Did you say something?
I think everyone has a copy of those that you
Oh,
can
okay.
hand
I
out.
didn't see that in the document.
No, I just copied them and gave those who were at Friday's meeting.
I don't think I got one, but
Well, the same document you gave to us.
okay.
That,
I don't know that I did. Okay, I'll just do it from my notes. Anyway, the $92,265 is what we would need to pay up front for our employees in order to join. And then an estimated, over 25 years, $943,550 to catch up back to 2010, when we became eligible to join. That is an estimate. The 37,000 is an estimate. The 92,000 we would have to pay now, based on the list that was sent to them. And that list is good until
March of 2022, then we can change the list. But if we want to do it between now and March, we have to use the list, whether or not those same jobs are filled. That's the list they're going on, and that's what they would charge us, is $92,000, just as the contribution, our share of the contribution for our employees. And that's based on, there's a complicated system of rates that they have. That's based on the 2022 rate. And that it gets very complicated. But the rates change every year, depending on a lot of things, on how much money they have in the retirement system. They can go up or down. This year, the rate is 10.5% for the people who would be going into tier 6. It would be 18% for people who would be in tier 4, and we have five people who could be in tier 4. And 12.2% for the one person who could qualify for tier 1. So next year, the rates go down to 8.1% for tier 6, 12.9% for tier 4, and 8.5% for tier 1. And again, that's based on a whole series of complicated things and actuarial calculations and everything else, but I think a lot of it is based on how much money the fund has, how healthy the fund is. So the thing is, the bottom line is, we don't know how much we would be paying. It could go down or it could go up. It wouldn't be the same amount every year, whereas in TIAA craft, I believe we pay 5%, and that's a kind of across the board, 5%. So it sounds like it would be a very expensive process for us to join. And that's, I think, where we left it. Plus the other issue is if we do join, anybody who, once we do join, anybody who's a full-time employee is required to join that pension system. There are other issues where if they're like a part-time employee, if they have some other qualifications, they don't have to join. But they would be required to join if they, once we decide to go that way. And the other issue is they have to be in for 10 years before they can invest and collect anything. Where with TIA or craft, they can collect right away, or in a very short period of time. So those are some preliminary things that I've learned.
But if someone doesn't stay for 10 years and therefore doesn't vest, they would still be able to pull that money out.
No. If you're in the retirement system, you're in for 8 years and you decide to retire, you get nothing.
Well, they can collect their contribution.
Yes.
Yes.
They can take their contribution out.
Yes.
I didn't know.
You'll think they could tell you can think.
I didn't know.
We did that. Christian?
There's, I think you said there's something about, it'd be $37,742 per year. If you want to buy that the previous 10 years,
Or, I think
would that also mean that the employees also need to buy that for the previous 10 years? And would that mean all employees?
I think it's just, I think the employees have to buy that back their own, but I don't know. What that would be. This would be our share of the buyback, but that's an estimate. That's based on this year's
If they don't do it based on
list that we
historical-
sent them, and it's based on this year's rate. It could change.
even if you're going back and forth.
Yeah, well, they said they would wait a year before we had to pay to evaluate where we are and where the rate is. So it's, even the guy I talked to said, it's very complicated and the actuary still figure it out and he didn't understand how to do it. But, I mean, there's obviously a lot more research we have to do on if we want to go in that direction.
So this is for the New York State retirement program.
Right.
And another option would be the IRA, right?
Which is what we're in.
We're in there. Okay, thank you.
Jerry, do you want to share out some of those next steps that we talked about, or? I don't. Okay. If you'd like to. Sure. Talk about something. Again, this wasn't the tree committee, but we did come up with some possible, no, actually some ideas of where to go with this. The next best steps were to have a representative from PIA and have someone from the New York State retirement system to come to the library and talk to both staff and board, you know, to keep us, to help us understand what the differences are, what the pros and cons are, and because I'm sure there's a lot of misunderstanding throughout of what each of these plans are going to actually entail. For understanding, and it would be helpful if someone actually came in. We're thinking about in January, because in January, hopefully, staff will have stabilized at that point. We'll have whatever, and whenever the new hires are going to be in place, and they're going to be going through their training period. Anyways, and that might be a good time for everyone to hear what retirement systems have as options. And also making some of those contacts, another discussion point that came up was looking at the retirement system as part of the benefits package. And looking at some of the other benefits. So maybe another part of that package could offset possibly entering, you know, the possibility of entering or not entering the state retirement. And also looking at the TIA contract that we have in you know, the overall benefits package, and see if there are some things we could adjust to that. So there were just some of the ideas that were put on the table, and so the discussion will continue. Jerry, I'm sorry if this is putting you on the spot, but I just want to make sure, have you changed your mind about the chairmanship?
No, and I'm happy to
Okay.
pass it on to Marie.
Okay.
who has expressed interest.
We'll see if anybody, just in case. Jerry is stepping down as chair. She has decided, but you do this? Oh, but Jerry is stepping down as chair. We have a volunteer, but I think in both in sportsmanship, is there anybody else that might be interested in taking on the chairmanship? What is that line? Hearing none. Marie has volunteered to take on the chairmanship, so if you're still.
Oh, Brianna, you're not interested because I know you're on the committee.
Okay. Then
Okay.
your committee. All right, done.
Follow-up question on this topic. Have you heard feedback from the staff in terms of what their feeling is about if you were to join this, if they think that would be a good thing or a bad thing, if they were required to join as well at the time?
Well, this started with the staff request. They wrote the board letter that asked us to consider this, and so I think they're thinking it's a good thing. So we're working on that. I don't want to use the word assumption, but on that gas. And we're going from there and looking at it as a package, so we can give them, and that's what we want the people from the retirement system really gives a better overview, because there's some that think that, yeah, it might be a better idea. Not, I don't think everybody's absolutely positively enamored with the retirement system either.
So would we get a follow-up position from the staff after the presentations have happened?
A follow position.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
They
part of the
still-
dialogue. You know, yeah, I don't know if they'll write us a letter, I don't know how it'll be done, but that's the whole point, is we're in discussion with staff, and this is for staff. So,
That's 2020.
oh,
But I
yeah,
agree with Krista that it should be a letter again, or something that's coming from them as a whole, because if we talk to each one of those individuals, everybody's gonna have a different idea.
oh,
If they're
no,
gonna put
yeah,
their name on a letter,
right,
then you're gonna know where they stand as a whole.
right,
So I think it's better to have
a letter.
some kind of response. After, you know, with the consolidated response.
Consolidate, I like that.
Thank you.
And certainly it's discussed, you know, in this informational session, if everyone's there, with focus on finding, we can certainly, yes, be more. Consolidated. I like that. We can remember that. Thank you. So, observation and community feedback. I'm sorry. Oh, here it is. The observation is what we've heard out there in the public. But you don't need that next, because it goes back to public comment. I can't talk, I'm sorry. Okay, so old business, new business?
I did have a question on the letter, the appeal letter. Is that going to be sent out like it has been in the past with individualized,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
the annual appeal letter? Is
The
that
what?
the annual appeal letter?
Yes,
Is that going to be, have two separate letters? The mass mailing,
two separate.
mailings, the mass mailing and then
Oh,
the one from the,
I don't know, I guess that would be,
I just, you know, wanted to bring that.
The other
Pardon?
option, what's the second?
Targeted. It's more of a targeted, with the,
With
with
the-
signing something, letting people know.
Right,
did that work well last time? I don't know that it did. I mean, I guess I'd recommend not doing two separate mailings.
and I don't know, it's been done that way for a few years. It was difficult during COVID. Because in the past, we actually had the letter going to the higher donors, distributed to the board members to send out, particularly if they knew the person and, you know, might have some personal appeal and on out. And it was certainly difficult to do during COVID, because we weren't meeting in person to be able to distribute the letters.
So some people have a list, and you someone pull their letter and say, well, thank you so much. For you to say that. This is me. How do people feel about doing that, and people be available to even look at that list and
Well,
write a note?
Well, it was more that the letters came and then were distributed rather than looking at a list.
Well, letters, whatever. you know,
Right, just to
are
clarify
people
that.
going to be available or interested in writing, both this is my other question. And write it as a note.
We sent those separately with separate postage,
Right,
I mean, full postage. The other letters
Yes.
go both ways.
Because the feeling was that that
It was more personal.
right, and would elicit a better response, that it's typically what's done by nonprofit organizations that do an annual appeal.
That goes back to the question again, are people here? Who, do people here, are they interested, do they have the time, are they willing to write notes on, even if it's a short note?
I'm not sure if I would know anybody on the list, but I'm happy to look.
Okay. Thank you.
I would, I would.
Happy to look at this as well.
So how would we do that? Would we look over the list as a group or
I think
individually?
one year we actually had we gave us a list that we could say, I'll take this person we initialed it.
Who
There
gave you
is
the
a
list?
list.
Where's the list?
It's big.
I thought that they were letters, that the letters themselves were distributed. to people.
At some point, but I think the
The list
person.
first, and then put the letters with the list.
But at least we know people are interested in doing it and that we just have to
Right.
coordinate it.
But we don't want two people sending it to the same person, or, I mean, and then if we did a mass mailing, they would get it twice. The targeted people. would get it
No.
twice.
Well, I think full goals.
No, Joy develops, it separates the two.
Yeah, she told
So, and then they come already addressed to the
Okay.
individuals. But you do have to do the little personalized note and also the address on the envelopes.
Yeah, we want handwritten.
me, all right, and address the envelopes. Right. Okay, anybody else with any? Joy, speaking about the letter, Joy had also asked this question. In some years, we will, even the mass mailing letter, we signed our names instead of just having them printed. I mean, the letter, when it goes out, our names are, printed as part of a formal letter that goes on the head, and then our names are at the bottom. Some years we've actually, each of us signed. Are people interested in signing? Do we all want to sign our names again?
We would have to sign every single one of them.
Gosh, no.
Okay.
She takes the electronic, she gets
It's,
our signatures. Oh, yes, 3,000. Oh, no.
We just need- We just need one signature.
No, just one signature, that's electronically, she puts it on, but it's
Certainly wouldn't want my handwriting on it.
it's pretty atrocious.
How much room is there?
Well, that's part of the, we'll see how the letter, when it's revised,
Right.
what's on the
It's
page.
got a ladder room, but there's
Because
not.
I know last year it was a really tight letter.
What that?
Last year, I believe that there wasn't a lot of space.
No,
With
there's
all
not
the-
gonna be.
We'll see, we'll see.
So, right.
It's getting trimmed.
What, so the question is, if there's space to do so,
Yes.
are we going?
Yes. Okay, all right. I think that was my answer to Joy. If there's things, we'll
And it
see.
comes out black too, because we only do two colors. White, black and white.
And this. Joy is not here, not right here, but because she talked about this. If people have material that's going to go into the Dropbox, if you have material that you send it to Joy and she'll actually put it in the Dropbox. It's easier to access, it's easier.
When you're saying Dropbox, I'm thinking of.
It's just easier, it's easier for you to change descriptions or, calling. So that's requested, people would go through Joy. Also, if any of us have to do a doodle poll, you didn't call it doodle, a doodle poll, if we could go through Joy to do that, so we can kind of coordinate it for all of us. Just give her really specific, the dates and times. Yes.
I just want to make sure clear on the process.
Yeah.
Okay, a little negative feedback previously when I asked Joy to do something directly. I think Joy works for Paul,
Yes.
so I want to ensure that I'm clear on the process, right? So if Paul says, Paul, please ask Joy to do this, do I say, Joy, please do this? In which case, if Joy's got a dozen different bosses, it's found that it's really challenging position to begin.
Well,
I send it to Paul, I sometimes CC
I
Joy.
would prefer that you did, yes.
Yes,
That's-
but the
that's
point,
fine.
my point was, instead of doing it ourselves, if it goes through Joy, how's, maybe I'll rephrase that. If it goes through Joy that way, but it's easier if there's very more specific times to say, any time of the day, when we do it, so we can respond, and it's easier for her to kind of. So very good call. Good call, but it's hard to good job. Yeah. And if everyone has been okay with meeting up here with the owl, our new friend, shall we use upstairs for our committee meetings? Like our building committee meeting? Is that okay?
It's
with
okay,
you?
it's okay with me, it's available through schedule. I like the room, I like the owl, I think it's pretty impressive, so.
When between the two meetings, I put it down there and requested the November and December dates for the building committee meetings.
Thank you.
I figured we could always pull it, but grab it before we, I don't know if it got done, because he had other people.
Sure.
Okay, but I'll let him know. He knows there's a note, I get it. So thank you for the housekeeping moment, appreciate that, and I'm sorry we made this date almost closing. But does anyone else have anything else? All right, in that case, next meeting, final meeting is December 14th, 5 p.m. for finance, 5:30 for the board. And we'll do it here in the gallery. With Hedwig. Are you ready to run the meeting? Sir, are you ready to run the meeting? Shall we adjourn? I make a motion to adjourn. We have a second. All in favor, yes. Good.